Minutos. Tripe.
Viceroy of Via, Rob Pierce.
Right?
The Viceroy of Via.
It'll be up to the public. Yeah. I'd always have that, what if, I'd lay in bed at night and go, what if I would have put in for it if I did it? So, it's like I got,
Good for you.
We'll see.
No, it's, you, it will be a huge positive step.
Everybody, it is Rob's birthday.
What?
25 insurance again.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Old knuckles out.
Just
But
had to
not
make
yet-
sure
not yet
everybody knew.
Not yet.
Independence. Stand by
Don't
us.
sing.
Let's do the Independence Day.
Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't have told you.
I know, I bet you wish you could mute my mic, huh?
Oh, really?
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the February 5th, 2026 Washoe County Board of Adjustment meeting to order. May we please have a determination of quorum?
Kathy Julian,
Present.
Leo Harishny,
Present.
Peter Kashan,
Present.
Pat Caldwell,
Present.
Rob Pierce.
President.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. If everyone would please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May we please have the ethics law announcement?
Commissioners are reminded that if, with respect to any matter or person coming before the commission today, you have received a gift or loan, you have a pecuniary interest, you have a commitment in a private capacity such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship, or you provided representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered. You must disclose that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered. And you must furthermore abstain from deliberation or voting on a matter if it is clear from that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation you would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Commissioners are also reminded of the, no, not applicable, never mind, that's it.
May we please have the appeal procedure?
Yeah, most decisions rendered by the by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and you qualify as an aggrieved person or party, you may appeal in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is reduced to writing, filed with the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 775-328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and the application fee.
Thank you. Do we have any general public comment?
There is no public comment in chambers and no general public comment in.
That guy just raised his hand.
Did you want to make general public comment or for a specific item?
I have you for the item.
This is just general public comment.
He's going to do it, the item.
Okay.
Public comment.
Thank you. Thank you. The February 5th, 2026 agenda, we need to make a modification before we move to approve it. We are going to pull WPVAR 25-0010515 roads berm variance. So with that change, do I have a motion?
Mr. Rob, I move to accept it with the change as written.
Thank you.
This is Leo Rishny. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. The January 5th, 2026 draft minutes, has everyone reviewed? Any comments, changes, questions?
Mr. Rob, I make a motion to accept as written.
This is Pat Caldwell. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the January 5th, 2026 draft minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Okay, we are on to public hearing item 8B, variance case number WPVAR 25-0011, 515 roads wall height variance. Mr. Lloyd?
For hearing, discussion, and possible action to approve a variance to exceed the maximum wall height from 6 feet to 15 feet 8 inches. The proposed variance is requested to bring into compliance an existing 95-foot-long wall with a height of 15 feet and 8 inches. The wall is located along the property's east side. Representing Washoe County in this matter is planner Jolene Bertetto.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great. Jolene Bertetto, planner. I can hear it now. Today, we are looking at the variance for WPVAR 25-0011, which we are referring to as the 515 roads wall height variance. Starting off with the parcel background, the subject property is located at 515 Rhodes Road. The parcel size is a little over 5 acres. The master plan designation is suburban residential, and the regulatory zone is low-density suburban in the South Valley's planning area. The variance request. The applicant is seeking a variance on the wall height requirements per the Washoe County Development Code, which states that the maximum height for fences, walls, or perimeter planting is 6 feet. The applicants do have an existing wall that exceeds that 6 feet maximum height, and they are requesting to vary the standard to bring into compliance that existing wall located near the applicant's eastern property line. This is a look at the site plan, just to show where the location is of that wall. You can see it over on the eastern side of that parcel. Some more about the wall. The subject wall is 15 feet 8 inches in height. It is 95 feet long. According to the applicants, it was constructed 8 years ago, and it is mounted with various birdhouses. The graphic here just shows a segment of the wall to show its height in regard to a pedestrian and an example of those mounted birdhouses. And here is a picture of the wall. This was provided in the application. This is from the back side of the wall. The birdhouses are mounted on the other side. Now, when evaluating an application for a variance, we are looking at specific characteristics of the parcel according to the Nevada Revised Statutes. We are looking at, is there exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of the specific piece of property? Are there exceptional topographic conditions? Or are there other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions of the piece of property where adhering to the code would create a hardship because of those characteristics? And I'll go over each of those three now. The first, looking at narrowness or shape of the property. This is a picture of the parcel. The parcel width exceeds the minimum width for the low-density suburban zone. The parcel size exceeds the minimum parcel size, and the parcel shape is not considered unique for the area. Looking at topography, the parcel's topography is level and gently sloping. It's gently sloping up towards the road. Other parcels in the area have a similar topography, so we did not find that topography created an exceptional situation. Now, extraordinary circumstances. The applicant does describe that they needed to remove a 700-year-old tree from their property, and after removing that tree, they state that they constructed the wall to shield newly planted trees and to cultivate the migratory bird population. And you can see in the picture there are those various birdhouses mounted on the side of the wall. It is staff's opinion that the removal of the mature tree does not constitute an extraordinary circumstance, and that strict application of the wall height requirements does not result in significant hardship. And going back to the purpose of variances, this is taken directly from the county code, and I'll read it for the record. The purpose of Article 804 variances is to provide a means of altering the requirements of this chapter in specific instances where the strict application of those requirements would deprive a property of privileges enjoyed by other properties with the identical regulatory zone because of special features or constraints unique to the property involved. And after reviewing this application, it is staff's opinion that the strict application of, in this case, the wall height requirements would not deprive the property of privileges enjoyed by other properties, but that furthermore, approval of the wall height variance would be considered a special privilege for the applicants, as other properties in the same regulatory zone would be prohibited by code from building a similar wall. For noticing and public comments, 33 property owners were notified, and we did receive 8 public comments in support of the wall. And one of those public comment letters was from the property directly next to the wall. That takes us to the findings, where, as mentioned in this presentation, staff is unable to make finding A and C. And so we are recommending denial of the variance application and provide a possible motion of denial. And I'm available for questions. I do believe the applicant is here and they've prepared a presentation as well.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for staff at this
Did
time?
you say A and,
Oh, I can go back.
or what did you say?
For the findings, we were unable to make finding A and C.
C is a
So
cap.
A of special circumstances.
Gotcha.
And C of no special privileges.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Is the applicant present, and do they wish to make a presentation?
Mr. Chairman, board members, good afternoon. For the record, Garrett Gordon today on behalf of Curtis and Judy Coulter. Mr. Coulter is here with me today. He is the property owner of the subject site. Perfect. First of all, this is being called a wildlife preservation wall. There's no definition in county code for wall, so you look at a fence. And this is behind the fence on the property, so arguably it's not a fence. So what is this? We looked up the definition of what we're trying to accomplish here, and a wildlife habitat structure designed to provide biodiversity by providing shelter, specifically nesting cavities. So I want you to think about, if you don't mind, as we go through here, what exactly this is, and if it does in fact violate this 6-foot fence requirement. So the findings, very important. I certainly know with my legal background that variances are few and far between. Not every day do I come and ask you for a variance. The issue here is it has to be very specific, extraordinary, exceptional situation. I'm going to go through my presentation, but let me just address maybe A and C where staff had some concerns. I would argue that there is no doubt that this is exceptional, given there was a 700-year-old tree on the property, the oldest tree in Nevada. It's been on the front page of magazines and books throughout Nevada. It was beautiful, and absent a weather event, it would still be there. Now, what did that tree do for this area? It had extraordinary wildlife in it, around it, and facilitated a migratory bird corridor coming through this area, landing and nesting in that tree. I'll show you what this property owner did out of his own pocket to create an arboretum, create some kind of alternative for the loss of that habitat within that tree. You'll also see we have 8 letters in support, one from the property owner directly behind this structure. Not one opposition letter, and as you can see behind me, not one public commenter objecting to this. It's been here for 8 years without issue, and I respectfully ask you today to uphold it. Special privileges. I'd also note we have 8 folks in favor. All the surrounding property owners all in favor. In my experience with variances, you get a lot of public comment to come out and say, why is this property owner getting a benefit? Why are we giving this person a privilege? You're not hearing that today. There'll be nothing on the record as far as something special being granted here other than a property owner investing in his property, investing in his community to try to keep this wildlife corridor present. Also, you'll see later in my presentation, UNR brings out students to come watch and participate in all this wildlife happening in this area. So I think all findings can be made, but certainly the first 2. So as I mentioned, here's the tree. The property was previously home to one of the largest trees in the state of Nevada, a cottonwood standing 105 feet tall and 42 feet in circumference. You can see that person standing there is a pretty phenomenal tree. The size of the tree and the property's location within the migratory bird path meant the tree was home to substantial wildlife. Unfortunately, in 2017, the Coulters were forced to remove the tree after it began to split apart due to inclement weather. Because the tree was of exceptional size and ecological significance, its removal created a special circumstance that required mitigation. So I give the Coulters credit. Rather than tearing this out and ignoring what was going on this property and around it, they put their money where their mouth is and built this structure that we'll go into a little farther to help keep those birds and that wildlife in the backyard. The Coulters undertook this efforts to create this arboretum and sanctuary to replace the lost habitat. Again, I would argue on that finding, special circumstance. I know variances, we do not want to create a precedent that other folks can use and abuse. I would argue no one could come before you and argue that they lost a 700-year-old tree with the wildlife that goes with it and should be granted a variance. So I would respectfully ask and state that we're not creating any precedent here that could be used or abused by other property owners. The arboretum. The Coulters embarked on an effort to create an arboretum by planting substantial new trees, of course, on their dime. The effort led to a significant increase in the migratory bird population visiting the area. I was out there actually a couple days ago. I wish all of you had the opportunity to go. Even in these winter months, it was bustling with activity of birds and wildlife everywhere. It's pretty impressive. What's been out there? What's been noted, not only by the Coulters on the record, but UNR has come out there and had their students observe the following: great horned owls, red-tailed hawks, falcons, finches, woodpeckers, doves, pigeons, quail, blackbirds, bluebirds, blue jays, crows, warbirds, wrens, and butterflies. It certainly was bustling when I was there this week, and no doubt in the spring and summertime, it's pretty spectacular. And you can see not only does the wall have birdhouses, and I'll explain why, but the trees that were planted and the mature trees that are still there have nests all over them that, again, are there because they feel comfortable with this arboretum feel, as well as you'll hear later, the reason why the birdhouses have to be placed so high on the wall is it's been documented that if the birdhouses are too low, cats or other predators can get those birds. So that certain birds only feel comfortable if they're up at a higher level in order to come and mate and reproduce. Smaller birds nest, what I was saying, nest in the housing on the habitat structure. The openings of the birdhouses are small enough to exclude starlings, which are invasive, so very particular of who and what birds are coming there. The arboretum provides safety and protection for the birds and also supports a natural food source for the birds to hunt safely. And here's just some pictures of an owl that's is nesting in the backyard. So this wildlife preservation wall, and you can see here, it looks nice. That's why, again, we have 8 neighbors in support, including the property owner behind this structure. To protect and cultivate the local wildlife, the Coulters built this wildlife preservation structure to shield the maturing arboretum from high winds and other environmental hazards, and to protect the migratory bird population, which take refuge in the area. Addition, the Coulters have commissioned the creation of various birdhouses mounted on the wall to provide that additional shelter. The height of the wall is necessary, so it wasn't kind of an arbitrary, let's just go 15 feet and 8 inches. Definitely with a lot of research and thought and talking to local experts, how tall that wall needed to be to, one, impact the wind, but 2, to make sure those birdhouses were at adequate height so the birds felt safe. The height of the wall is necessary to ensure use by the birds. For example, finches prefer nest boxes placed over 8 feet to ensure safety from predators. And again, as far as the findings, I think all this goes to the special circumstance that is pretty unique out here on this property. Part of the application just shows here is that structure. When we get into the question of, is this a wall, is this a fence, is this a structure, is something else that's not regulated by code, you can see there's actually a fence behind this structure. This particular structure, you can see, just stands on 2x4s. So it's not your typical fence or wall that will extend down to the dirt. It kind of gets moved up off the dirt with those 2x4s to go up to the appropriate height. So I still kind of question if this height limitation does in fact apply to this particular structure, but we certainly wanted to go through this process and have our data ask all of you rather than debate with staff whether this even applies. And so here's a picture Here's a picture from their backyard. So you can see right in the middle of that yard, that different colored tree right in the middle, the pine, I believe. That's where the big 700-year-old tree, was located. And you can see it pretty much took up their whole backyard. But after that tree fell, there was nothing that could be done to preserve it. The Coulters reinvested in their property, reinvested in the community to just make this an exceptional arboretum and wildlife habitat for the birds and the wildlife that were living and housing and nesting in that tree. And here's some more pictures. And certainly you can see, I mean, these were taken where in the wintertime where a lot of those branches are bare, but you can imagine in the summer and springtime, for the most part, you can't even see the tree unless see that structure unless you're in the backyard. It's pretty much invisible from the road, pretty much invisible from the surrounding properties. The ones that can see it have consented. But I would argue to you, it's not obnoxious. It's not taking advantage of the situation. No special privileges are being given. They're just trying to mitigate the loss of a pretty spectacular tree and the wildlife that went with it. And finally, the no detriment or special privileges. The wall was in place for 8 years. So I could understand maybe if within the first month or maybe first year or 2 years I was before you, maybe no one in the neighborhood didn't notice it or they didn't have concerns and then changed their mind, but it's been here for 8 years with no issue. And as mentioned, you can see, I don't think I have a pointer, but on the right-hand side where there's those 2 red dots, right, you can see the little square there, the rectangle, that's where the structure is, exactly. So those 2 red dots behind it, those are property owners who have consented to the structure. So I would argue if there was a special privilege or a detriment to anyone, it would be those property owners, and they've actually consented. As you move along the screen westbound, you can see red dots littered around this area with neighbors who not only don't object, but support what the Coulters have done in their backyard to mitigate the loss of that large tree. And I'd also note in your staff report that this application went to Washoe County Water Rights Manager, Washoe County Law Enforcement, Washoe County Engineering, Washoe County Capital Projects, Washoe County, Northern Nevada Environmental Health, and the Fire Department, and no concerns whatsoever by any of those agencies. And again, why no detriment or special privileges? The nature of this property resulting from special circumstances and the necessity to preserve active wildlife, places the Coulters in a unique situation, distinct from any other property, I would say, in northern Nevada, so we're not creating an undue precedent. The preservation wall is not a privilege, but it's a necessity to protect the existing wildlife population. And this is what I've stressed a couple times, but I think it is important to show that this is a active arboretum. Is the wall is supported by neighbors and the community, but also it's open to UNR Master Gardener Tour and is frequently visited by not only locals and folks in Northern Nevada, but UNR Master Gardener class and tour take advantage of this as well. And finally, the use authorized, staff didn't have an issue with that finding, so that can be made. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the additional time. I just wanted to get everything on the record, and myself or the property owner, Mr. Coulter, is here to answer any questions, and thank you for your indulgence this afternoon.
Thank you. Shall we open it up for any questions?
I have a question.
Please, go ahead.
For staff. Kathy Julian, for the record. You know, I'm looking at the previous item that was just taken off the agenda for the berm, and I'm looking at the administrative penalty notices for each of those items. And I noticed the one for the berm had a provision that allowed for a director's modification, but the one for the fence wall doesn't have that provision for a director's modification, and I'm wondering why that is.
Jolene Bertetto, planner, for the record. That's a great question. For clarification, the director's modification that is available for the berm is a specific provision in the county code for grading, where a director's modification may be approved with recommendation from the county engineer. We do not have a similar provision in the code for fences and walls. Trevor, would you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think you nailed it. For the most part, what we have is a very specific situation where under certain circumstances where the county engineer recommends support for such an encroachment into that 2-foot setback specifically for grading purposes, there's a section in Article 438 of the Development Code that allows for a director's modification. And as Jolene indicated, there's not a similar opportunity for wall height adjustments.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
This is Pat Caldwell for the record. I have a question for the applicant, actually. Can you tell me what year the house was built?
Let me bring up the property owner, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Curtis Coulter for the record. I bought the house in 1997 from Steve Milstein. If you're familiar with the road, it's called Rhodes Road. Bryce Rhodes built the original house there, and so this was really the premier property in all of Steamboat. That house was built by Bryce Rhodes in multiple phases, probably starting in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and we tried to save the property, but the deepest foundation was 14 inches by 7, and every once in a while you just hear something creak and a wall moves. So we did everything we could to try to preserve it, and the reason we wanted to preserve it is because of the tree that was in the backyard. That tree in the backyard was in the cover of Nevada Big Book tree. It was the largest tree in the state of Nevada, and trees are measured at 4.5 feet in their circumference. Then they get a certain number of points, and they measure the crown, and they measure the height. It was probably 20% more points than the next closest tree in the state of Nevada, and it was the largest Fremont cottonwood in the United States of America. So the original house was taken down. We got a C of O at that house as it sits now in October of 2015.
So at the time, this is Pat Calder for the record, so at the time you built your house, were you unaware of the regulations required for fences? And you just didn't seek to get approval for a 15-foot fence?
We didn't consider it a fence. The fence was behind it. We considered it a habitat structure. And so it was a matter, and I looked at the fence height, and so I thought, well, this isn't a fence. It doesn't go to the ground. If my interpretation was wrong, then so be it. But when I looked at it, I couldn't find a definition that seemed to fit the habitat structure as being either a fence or a wall. at least in contemporary vernacular, I thought, well, this really doesn't meet either of those. I thought it really was just really the replacement of habitat.
Yeah, this is Pat Coldwell for the record. I can appreciate the fence and, being a fence used for migratory birds and such. And I actually visited the property and checked it out. And, I was quite impressed with what you've done out there overall. But having said that, I guess I just don't understand why, if you go through the building of a home, all the rules, the regulation, the engineering, that now when you build a 15-foot fence that, in my opinion, seems to be in front of a house that was potentially, which was really close to your property line, that I guess I don't really understand a 15-foot fence other than to shield that property.
Oh, well, I guess in part it certainly does that, but the purpose was, and if you look at it, it has air vents in it to let the air through so it doesn't go down with the winds we get, but it really was for the habitat. And we spent a lot of time trying to find appropriate habitat, so we had all the nesting boxes built out of California. We brought them in. One of the criteria for them specifically was that they would not be habitat for starlings. So if you're familiar with starlings, we wanted to make sure those were excluded.
Yeah, this is Pat Calder for the record. I do have one other question that, no, sorry, I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Leo Harishi for the record.
Yes, sir.
Leo Harishi for the record. What was the decision and why was the choice of where you sited your wildlife structure, wall, not fence,
Why is it placed where it is?
basically abutting the existing fence?
I think that's really a good question. If you look at the overall habitat, the whole ecosystem, Mr. Gordon showed you some of them, but there are a number of cottonwoods that are to the north, and so we wanted to sort of contain that entire ecosystem. There was the McNabb cypress, which is the largest McNabb cypress in the Nevada. That was to the south. The largest locust was out to the west, and so we just wanted to try to contain it within that area so that there would be a safety barrier. Because if you've been out there, and thank you for coming, we have not only eagles, but we have falcons, we have predatory birds, and so having that type of structure, they either go into trees or they try to find some shelter to get away from the predators. So the purpose of its location was to contain and to identify that perimeter, if you will, for the ecosystem that's there, and it's quite extensively. Right now we've got a pair of great horns nesting right now, and probably a month we'll have red tails, but we have great horns every year. They used to be in the big tree. They've moved a little bit, but the owls hunt the quail, and we probably have, 500 quail on property, depending on the coyotes and the other birds that are hunting them. So it's sort of like somebody's in and somebody's out all the time, but it goes all the way out in front. So if you look at the front of the property, you'll see spruce added to the western border and spruce on the south, and the habitat is enormous because it's probably the pinnacle property out of all of Steamboat for nesting habitat for the migratory birds. The yellow-headed finch just started coming back up about 2 weeks ago, and the redheads should be up in a couple of weeks, I imagine.
Leo Harishi for the record. I appreciate the respect and the responsibility for the natural environment that you were in, and that absolutely I can appreciate that the loss of a significant piece of woodland would be significant. I am struggling with the idea that you would then, as a response to that, go to this length for this construction and not consult.
I did consult with my neighbor, Mr. Mahoney, Dick and Sue Mahoney, immediately to the east of us.
And I appreciate that. That certainly, that certainly is important, but it's, it was interesting when I read this and I went out and saw the property and I thought, okay, this is a fence that's clearly too high over there. But then now coming here and hearing the issue is the fact that it was sited just adjacent to the fence so that it can be not called a fence anymore. I don't know.
I don't think it certainly
I'm
wasn't.
not comfortable with
Yeah, it wasn't an attempt to try to subvert the rules. That wasn't the intent.
All right.
So, I mean, it really was an
that.
effort to
Appreciate
work
that.
with our
Thank you.
neighbors, and we've done all of that to the best of our abilities. And we've talked to our neighbors and asked them, invited them to come out and look at it many times, and tried to get their input, because we're all part. Steamboat's a pretty small community, and we all get along fairly well. And so I think what we always try to do is maintain the integrity of the valley, of the community, so somebody's not doing something unusual that offends somebody else. And I think that was one of the things we tried to accomplish in our efforts.
Peter Gashon, for the record. Question for staff, please. When you look at code, it talks about fences, walls, or perimeter plantings. So the word perimeter only attaches to plantings. If this structure were placed in the middle of the property, would we still be having this issue?
We were just discussing perimeter planting and what that means the other day. We think perimeter planting primarily refers to a hedge that has the same purpose as a fence or a wall. This doesn't meet the definition, however, of a structure as defined in the definitions in the county code, where a structure is a roofed and walled building. So I understand that the applicant's arguing that it might not meet the exact definition of a wall or fence, but it's also not considered a structure per county code.
But if this were situated in the middle of the property, would we be having this issue?
Yeah, the code doesn't grant flexibility in that regard. So regardless, 6 foot tall is the maximum height for a wall or a fence.
Kathy Jillian, for the record, just to follow up on the chair's comment, question. But if it were in the middle of the property, then would it be considered a fence in the middle of the property? And what would it need to be considered a structure in terms of additions to it? Does that make
And
Thank you.
Peter Gashon, if I could follow that, what if this were not a structure, but it was built as a square or a triangle? Then ostensibly it would not be a wall.
Give me a moment, please, while I'm
Okay.
looking up code. I want to first see if there is a definition of a wall or fence. But beyond that, I can provide a definition for a structure. And that is essentially a building that has a minimum of 3 sides and a roof. So this is clearly not a structure. So the question then is, well, what is it, right? So I understand that. If you give me a moment, I'll have to research the code.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions while Trevor's researching?
Yeah, this is Pat Calder for the record. Regarding that, a structure, can you put 2 sides on it and put a 2-foot roof and say it's now a structure?
Jolene Bertetto, planner for the record. I'm not positive where it's located in regard to the property line, but at its current height, it's possible that it would be built as a structure then into the setbacks, which would also be prohibited.
Yeah, a structure must meet the minimum setback. So if it were a structure, it would have to be a minimum of, in this case, 12 feet from the property line.
I see. Thank you.
Follow-up question, Kathy Julian, for the record. How many feet from the property line is the wall?
That'd be a question for the applicant if you're, no.
Hello, Curtis Coulter. I'd say it's approximate. The fence is entirely on my property as opposed to a common fence, which we share with Mahoney. And I think it's probably within the property line by a foot, and it has some columns on it. So I would say if we went to roughly the property line, the habitat structure is probably, somewhere in the 5 foot plus or minus range, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less.
From the property line?
From the property line. It's not on the property line. And there was a previous question in regard to the unit next door, Mr. Mahoney's other unit. I don't remember which was in first, if it was his auxiliary unit or this structure, but I don't think that it wasn't built because of that unit. So if that clarifies that question.
This is Pat Calder for the record.
Yes, sir.
Why not plant mature trees?
Well, I'm 70 almost, and it takes a long time for them to get that big.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, when you plant a tree, they charge you per the caliper, so the diameter. So when we put in the spruce along our driveway, you can only get to a certain diameter before they are no longer transplantable. So what we did try to do is we tried to find mature trees, because if I planted ones that were this lady's age, I would be long gone before I get to see them, in their full glory. So it was not only a matter of an unreachable expense, but really an unavailability. So you can find, in some really extraordinary circumstances, you can find specimen trees, and we looked at that. We looked at bringing a new specimen tree in. We looked as far as the Carolinas to bring one back on a truck. And you're talking about literally hundreds of thousands of dollars if you could find one. And then the root ball on them are probably 12, 14 feet. And so the practicality of doing it without a guarantee that it would survive was virtually just impossible. We had to bring a crane out, an excavator, to take out the root system that was on that tree. It would take about, 12, 14 people to put their arms around it. So it was a good question. We looked at that. We wanted that. We wanted to bring that back, and we just couldn't get there. We thought maybe we could find some oaks. We could find some different species that would be compatible with our climate, and there was absolutely nothing available.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Not question.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Lloyd, update for us?
I do have the definition. A fence means a wall or barrier constructed of boards, masonry, wire, or any other material for the purpose of enclosing space or separating parcels of land. The term fence does not include retaining walls, but does include fence gates and gate posts.
So the purpose was, this is Rob for the record, the purpose was what?
The purpose of enclosing space or separating parcels of land.
Closing space or separating parcels of land. Doesn't meet that.
Yeah. Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
I have Rick Blake in Chambers. You have 3 minutes, Rick.
Yep, my name is Rick Blake. One of the red dots there that was up on the screen. Kind of amazing here because I'm only a block or so as a crow flies. I'm taking down 3 big cottonwoods even today. These guys have been on it for about a week. I should be there with them, but this is really important. They've got to come down. I'm going to have to do something as well to keep these birds. You've seen what they are. They're predatory birds. They're the mice. The food chain, I think, is what we really are trying to keep going here because it's very delicate out there. So I think that what Curtis did and Judy was fantastic. They're keeping this thing going. It's the way it should be to keep this chain alive. What else am I? thinking about as far as the trees that you were just talking about. The reason I have to take these down is because the insurance, we're uninsurable now. These trees are so big. Mine are 100 feet tall. We've checked with many. Our insurance company is already going to cancel us the next renewal, and no other insurance company will pick us up. So trees all over the place, it's going to be a thing of the past, and I don't know what people out there are going to do. So we do need structures like this to keep this going. All of us, everybody doesn't have a problem with it out there. We drive by, we see it, it's beautiful, it works. That's a good thing. So I consent to the variance that they're requesting, and the structure I don't feel is in any way detrimental to the area at all, and no special privileges are being given to the Coulters. So I hope you'll see that. It's important for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone
There's
else?
No further public comment in chambers. On Zoom, I have James Grimes. If you'll please unmute and state your first and last name for the record. James Grimes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your first and last name and go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
James Grimes, and I own the property adjacent to the Coulters. While I listened to all this stuff about the Coulters and the fence and everything, when I applied for a fence permit, I could only build a fence 6 foot high. The Coulters never applied for a permit, and they build one 15 and a half feet high. The Coulters have turned me into the county for everything that they can possibly think of, like the berm that was removed today. Well, they called the county on me of backfilling within 2 feet of their property. I don't know why it was pulled today. I've dug the 2 feet out on my side. They've called the county on me for every possible thing that they could possibly find in the code. And now when the code works against them, the Coulters, they just want to sweep it under the rug. They're protecting the birds. Well, it's not right. I couldn't build a fence 15 feet high. They shouldn't build a fence 15 feet high. I applied for a permit. They never applied for a permit. They never applied for a permit for their chicken coop. You know, they've changed all the water flows, piped everything underground without ever asking anybody, and then dumped those pipes into my property that I've been dealing with ever since. So I strongly object to anything that the Coulters got going on. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That concludes public comment for this item.
Okay, let's bring it back to the board for discussion.
Yeah, this is Rob for the record. I don't think it meets the definition of offense per what Mr. Lloyd said. I think that this was put up in good faith. I understand the issue about the trees because my neighbor got hit, her insurance almost got canceled. So I think this is a viable option for what he's trying to do. It's active. He has people coming out. I don't think he's getting anything that he shouldn't be getting. And we have made adjustments in the past for things like this. And for, anyways, I would be in full support of approving this, not, approving it, not denying it.
Thanks.
Kathy Julian, for the record, I tend to agree that it doesn't meet the definition of offense because it doesn't fully separate the properties. I mean, it doesn't separate the properties because there's another fence that separates the property that is in conformance with the code. I also, if the only area of discomfort I have is that should the house next door, I can't remember the name, Mahoney, should they ever sell, would the neighbors next door have an objection to this? So I'm just wondering if one could put as a condition here some reference to subsequent parcel owners in that property next door being in agreement with the structure being there, but I'm not sure if that is necessary if one does not interpret that this is a fence. But that's the only concern I would have, is to ensure that the neighbor right adjacent remains comfortable.
I would be very reluctant to put a condition for future residents. We do have a letter from the immediate neighbor that you're referring to, that property owner, that is in support. And I think that I think that's the best that we can get at this point.
Okay. Then I'm comfortable supporting this.
Pat?
This is Pat Calder for the record. I guess what I worry about is, having heard now Mr. Grimes and his concerns, that what if one day Mr. Grimes, without a permit, decides to build a 15-foot fence along that property line with the Coulters? Is that going to be acceptable? I don't think so, right? I mean, that's what I worry about, is you make an exception for this, and then the neighbor next door, clearly there's an issue. He wants to build a 15-foot fence without a permit. So that's my concern.
Leo Rishny for the record. And then here, piggybacking on Pat's statement, we have someone here coming today, another person in the area that, though he hasn't said that he might need to or wish to enact a structure due to having to take down trees and the habitat that he's aware that he will be losing on his property. I don't know. I'm really struggling with the fact that as close as this was to the fence line, and that it wasn't something this massive, something this much money and investment, though I appreciate the intent and I appreciate the money and goodwill and so forth. I also hold someone who has that much energy and intent to understand and appreciate, if I'm going to enact something like this, I should likely have to see what kind of building permits I need. And there's been no discussion here so far about this fence being installed, or this structure, being installed with any notification by any relevant person at the time. And okay, so it's been there for 8 years, but then now we have a hostile neighbor next door who we are setting up to create the motivation for them to respond, as well as a positive neighbor. If based on also enacting a structure based on the fact that, because this is a structure and not a fence, even though it's within a fence stone arm's throw, not even arm's throw, it just feels like someone tried to pull something. It's just, that's how I don't know how I'm going to vote on this even right now.
Thanks, Leo.
Thanks, Leo. This is Pat Calder for the record. Maybe this is a legal question that to Chaz or Trevor, that if we approve this fence and then the neighbor comes back with a similar request and is denied, what sort of legal ramifications are there for that?
We may team up on this, but I'll go ahead and take the first stab at it.
Okay.
My advice to you all is look at the evidence that you have in front of you, and every variance that is brought forward is case by case. And so we would have to look at the merits of any future variance application. Are there special circumstances, right? And so your role is to look at the findings, to make sure that if you support this, that you can in fact make all of the findings that Jolene laid out in her staff report. Can you make the finding for special circumstances based on a hardship? Does this constitute a special privilege, right? Is there a significant detriment? So again, it's based on the information, the facts that you have in front of you, based on the characteristics of the individual property. So in that regard, I don't believe you're setting a precedent if you can in fact make those findings. And if there's anything you want to add.
No, Trevor hit on the points that I would have said as well. I mean, it's evidence that's in front of you, and it's a case-by-case basis, making those findings that are required for the variance. Beyond that, I mean, a different property would have different circumstances likely, that you would make those additional findings either to agree or disagree with, so.
Okay, thank you.
This is Peter Gashon for the record. I'll weigh in. I'm very familiar with the property. We board horses in the area and drive by it countless number of times over the past 5 years. And whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, I've never even noticed it. So I think that that's a good thing because it's well concealed into the community. That I have never noticed it until I drove by yesterday and saw it for the first time. The first time I ever disagreed with staff was over a fence variance. And I think that we have approved fence variances and we have denied several fence variances because we look at an evidence-based examination each time. Here, I do find an exceptional situation, so I can meet finding A. I can also meet finding C. This area is just wild with horses and ponies, and unfortunately Bernard passed away, but he was raising ducks in these structures. I don't know what to call them. There's these giant totem poles 15 feet high with netting across the top of them. So if he could raise ducks and other waterfowl without a permitted structure, I don't think this would be a grant of a special privilege because people in the area raise all sorts of wild things in all sorts of wild structures. I know this isn't a structure, but it's also not a fence because we don't meet the definition. So I can make the 5 findings, and I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is Rob. I might just add that this was put up in 2017, and I don't know what's going on with the neighbor, but I don't think, I think this was, if there was a problem with the neighbor, I think he would have brought it up years ago. So I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, Peter Gashon for the record. I think we're going to have our hands full with the berm next time, but I think this is inconsequential relative to the neighbor.
And Kathy Julian, for the record, I was out there today and I saw, I would be less concerned about a neighbor putting up another fence or a wall that resembles this as a fence on essentially a completely bare piece of land, because there would be no special circumstance of any tree that had been taken down or anything to protect. So I have less of a concern about, I'm going to say, a copycat wall installer in terms of this, so that I would support this as well.
Okay. Any other discussion from the group? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Rob. I'll make the motion. I move that after giving reasonable consideration and information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustments approve variance case number WPVAR 25-0011 for the 515 Roads wall height variance, having been able to make all 4 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Development Code Section 110.804.25.
We have a motion.
Kathy Julian, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
Thank you all. This little kid's background, all those plants go up. I want to get rid of that. It's just there for that. Thank you very much. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay. Chair and board items. Anyone? Have any requests for future agenda items?
Nope.
Any requests for information from staff?
Yeah, can we have a raise?
Directors and legal counsel items, report on previous Board of Adjustment items.
Nothing to report on.
Nothing. Okay. Any legal information or updates?
Chaz Lehman for the record, nothing to report on.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
There's no further public comment.
Okay, it is now 2:28. This meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
That was a